Here's what I would ask is that if you have a little piece of paper or something there that you need to mark a couple of words, that so that when you have a question, you can just you'll do that. But what I'd like to do is is to maybe just talk. I'm going to watch myself here. I can do that. And I'm going to aim for 20 minutes to just talk a little bit about, oh, I don't know, what's fresh for me. And if I go over 25, um, and Sue or Annie, get the hook ready and get me around the neck and pull me off. But I'm going to aim for 20, and then just take some questions. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to to the journey. I was saying to Annie and Stu, anything that if you have anything, not only questions, but if you have anything that you think might help, if you've got friends or somebody that you think might want to come, but if there's something that we can say or that I can do to make it more appealing to people. The one thing I thought of the last couple of days, and I'm going to do it not only for here, but for the other stops on that trip, is to let people know that at least over 50%, and if people wanted to be 60 or 70%, I would have no problem with that. That the vast over 50% of the time would not be me presenting. It would be me taking discussion and questions and inquiries and talk more about this or and one of the things that I always do, and I'll do in leads, is at the beginning, the one thing that I ask for is a flip chart and a few markers, because what I do at the beginning is to just ask people, if the next 2 days or even today, the day was successful, what questions, what inquiries would be answered? What would you see that you don't see now, or what would be clearer for you? And so we mark those down, write them out and put them up on the walls so we don't forget them. And what I do typically is on the second afternoon, if it's a 2-day program, is I go back to those questions and I go to the person, if they're willing to, the person that asked the question, and say, do you have anything more that you've seen about this? Maybe it's still not as clear as you'd like it to be, but have you had any insights come to you during the time? And then kind of put it open to discussion to see if other people have had insights, because frequently one person's insight is kind of a incentive to, or awakens a leapfrogging effect in somebody else. Wouldn't you say that, Sue, that happens? That
Yes.
that somebody else, when you're kids, do you remember the leapfrogging where you'd go over each other? Maybe they didn't do that in England.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I did. Well, it's kind of like that. So one person's insight triggers another person's insight. And the important thing to remember, as I was talking to somebody in Israel earlier today, and another person actually in Germany, but is that we're all made of the same energy. I'm not made of a different energy. I've been in this disguise for more years than most of you. But we're all made of the same energy, and we're all drinking from the same well. I don't have a better well than you do. We're all drinking from the same well of wisdom. And to the degree that we start to get an understanding, not intellectual, but a realization of the connection between our spiritual nature, that just means, well, spiritual nature and our psychological nature. Sid says in The Great Illusion, as that incrementally gets, you have incremental realizations regarding that connection. sanity, happiness and sanity occur effortlessly and naturally. Effortlessly and naturally. Isn't that what we're all seeking? Most of us have tried for years. I certainly tried for 41 years to figure things out analytically. I'm here to tell you it didn't work real well. It resulted in about 6 to 9 hours of me doing this and going in and out of depression for about 20 years and seeking assistance from 6 very fine psychiatrists who helped me continue my education and my work. But when I sat on April Fool's Day in 1983 and listened to Sydney Banks, within 30 minutes, I knew that he knew 1,000 times more than I did about mental health, and that he knew 1,000 times more than any psychiatrist that I'd ever been treated by. I don't expect you to believe that or anything. That's just my experience. And it gave me hope. It gave me hope that because I saw that my 20 years of depression was not from my genes. In fact, I had depression and alcoholism on both sides of the family, and now I've had a suicide on both sides of the family. It came from the fact that I had little understanding of the nature of life and the nature of what people call God is, or at least the attributes that I attributed to the source were not pure love and understanding. They were emotional lability and judgment and punishment, which scared the hell out of me on a regular basis. And even though I realized it was me doing this to myself 6 to 9 hours a day, that was freeing. That was freeing because I knew it wasn't from all those things external. My circumstances, my quote, stressors, which I see now as challenges. I don't use the word stressor in my language anymore. I think that word gives power to an inert object or situation that it doesn't have. Again, no judgment, but I see them as challenges. And any time that I experience any emotional distress, I know people think I'm weird when I say this, but I kind of get excited. And the reason I get excited is because I know that I'm being given an opportunity to see something that I haven't seen yet deep enough. I know that my level of understanding these principles is not up to the challenges that I'm facing in my life right now. And that my distress is a love letter. It's a love letter. It's a salutary incentive to change. Salutary means health promoting. And I'm quoting Thomas Merton, actually a Trappist monk who, and I don't consider myself to be religious, even though I was raised religious, but a little book of his I pulled off the shelf a few months ago. It's called something about the Bible. And I was surprised, what am I doing pulling this Trappist monk's book off my shelf? It's been there for 15 years. But something told me there was a reason. And I'm not going to go into all the pages, but pages 73 to 77 of that little book called Opening the Bible, I felt as if Thomas Merton, this Trappist monk, and Sydney Banks had had lunch together. And they laughed and they laughed and they laughed. And then they each said, why don't you say it your way and I'll say it my way. And I know that didn't happen because Merton actually died in 1968, over in Indonesia when he was attending a conference of monks. And that was 5 years before August of 1973, which is when Sydney Banks had his experience. So August of 2023, next year, will be the 50th anniversary of that experience. I didn't immediately see how to stop doing this, but just knowing that my head, right, metaphorically, my right-sided headache was coming from me slamming my fist into my head was hopeful, because I thought it was coming from a whole bunch of things that had happened many years ago, or that were happening in the present days, but that over which I had no control over. So it was immediately freeing to know that I was the agent of my pain. And it gave me hope that there would be some level of understanding if I kept looking in this direction of the connection between the spiritual and the psychological, not religious, no dogma, no rituals. Theology, yes. Theology meaning an understanding of the attributes of what's behind life, what people call God, of being pure love and understanding rather than judgment and punishment. That was new. That was revolutionary to me. That if I had further insights, that I maybe would likely, in fact, I really felt hope. I felt 250-pound weight leave my upper chest and shoulders, because I really felt hopeful that I would have insights that would allow me to hit myself less often, incrementally, and that even when I did do so, I would do it with less force, and I would stop quicker, so that there would be more greater periods of time that I wasn't hitting myself in the head at all. And that's what's happened over the past 39 years plus. I'm in my 40th year of exploration as a student. And I don't say a teacher of these principles, because I don't think you can teach something that people already know. You can share what you've seen, and it often awakens that place of recognition in people where they remember the great remembering. They remember that they already knew this. We kiddingly, back in the 80s, I used to call this flathead therapy, because people would go, oh, shit, I know this. Oh, I knew this. Do that enough times, I'd maybe flatten your head. I don't know. Because it is recognition. And now that I see some of your faces, when I come to visit, I might recognize you, but I can only recognize a person that I've seen before. I see my friend Julian there, and Helen, yeah. People that I know, I can recognize, but I have to know them first. And that's the beautiful thing about this, is we all know this. We all know this. We just have to be reminded. I love the Hebrew saying that words spoken directly from the heart reach the heart. I love that saying. Because believe me, I've said the same words to people from a place of judgment that had no impact. But when they were from my heart, even though if you saw them on a transcript, they were the same words, but they were from a place of love and understanding. and the person heard it because there was no judgment that got in the way of their hearing. One of the things I've been apt to tell people lately when they say, "Oh, what do you mean? Love and understanding is what's behind life." Do you have any evidence of that, given what's happening in the world? I say, well, the logic of it we can discuss, but there's also an organization in all 195 countries that's totally based on unconditional love. I said, did you know that? People go, are you kidding me? I said, no, it's in all 195 countries. And it's based on unconditional love. And before I tell you the name of the company, if that's true, if it's in all 195 countries, it would seem like there's a good chance that that's our default setting. And if that's our default setting is love and understanding when we're not in fear or judgment, then that means that what's at the source of life itself is pure love and understanding. Don't have to believe that. I ask you to look in that direction and see what you start seeing. So I suspect there might be a few of you that have already heard me say, but would you like me to name the organization in all 195 countries? Could I see at least one or two nods? I see a couple of nods. It's called grandparenting. It's called grandparenting. Now, not 100%, but vast majority of grandparents love unconditionally. Parents want to love unconditionally, but they get caught up in their fears of how the child's going to turn out or what people will think. Now, the extreme is horrible. The extreme is, I think I got spanked quite a bit, not only because of my behavior. I used to tell people that the treatment for oppositional defiant disorder in the late 1940s was very simple. It was wait till your father gets home. And my father used to say how hard it was for him to spank me. And I didn't believe him. And now I do believe him, because here he had worked all day, coming home to his wife and kids. And what's his first job? Is to take his firstborn son over his knee and spank him. But why? Because we know that, boy, if you don't teach them with punishment early, they're going to they might even end up in hell for eternity from this vengeful God. So you got to do what you got to do, even if it hurts. The extreme, of course, was the lady in our country here who, out of fear that her rambunctious 5 sons would end up in hell from a vengeful God, that she drowned her 5 sons one at a time out of love to keep them from reaching adulthood and being able to be punished by this source. So I know I tread on delicate land, because I never want to tell people got to do what they got to do as far as what they see God is and what they see as doctrine that's special to them. But I'm telling you, as a psychiatrist, I've seen more mental illness out of fear of a vengeful God than I saw from anything else in 48 years as a psychiatrist. And I'll just leave it at that and ask you to be open that was a innocent, misguided thing that people have been told, that keeps people from being more in touch with who they truly are more of the time. And I maybe shouldn't have said what I said, but it came, and it felt right to do so. So I'm going to stop. My 20 minutes are up. I can see the hook. I saw Sue looking for the hook. So I thought I'd anticipate it before she got it. And I'll take questions or discussion or anything that people would like.
Has anybody got any questions for Bill? Just as a warm up of any sort.
Even if you tried really hard, there's no bad question. So
Absolutely.
This isn't really a question, Bill, but something you said really touched me about being agents of our own pain. And there's a tremendous amount of challenge in the world at the moment, which is why you suggested our conference be about hope for humanity and psychology. If we can share from that heart to somebody else's heart about emotional challenges, deepening our understanding, where would you start with that, Bill? If you're just having a conversation with somebody.
I would start with listening. And being in the present moment with them. And then I would be guided. See, there's no formula. And you know this, Annie. I know I'm speaking to the choir. There's no formula. To the degree that our personal mind quiets, it's replaced by divine mind. 100% of the time, it's just the way the system works. I wouldn't pretend to try to figure out where I would start as far as the content any more than I would with a client. I would be present. I would get totally present. You know, I think of this incredible story that you've probably heard Linda tell, that she told the first time my wife, Linda, we had both been widowed almost 3 years, when she came to speak. And by the way, she's going to speak on Sunday morning. I offered for her to do, because she wasn't even going to be able to come. And then she decided that she could come. And I said, it would be really fine with me if we split up the 4 half days, half and half, and you did half and I did half, and I would just sit and listen a half of yours. And she reflected and said, no, I really would just like to talk about the intuitive, the intuitive power of love. And so she's going to do that on Sunday morning. But what made you think, Annie, is that the day that she tells this story, and you've probably heard her tell it. She told it the first day when she presented at West Virginia University at the Integrative Medicine Grand Rounds for the medical school on Valentine's Day, 2003, on the healing power of unconditional love. And she told the story, and I kind of get choked up. It's not my story, but she told the story of, as a counseling, her doctorate degree is in counseling psychology, which means that her focus is in counseling, not in inpatient psychology, but in as counseling. But she had to have a rotation on inpatient, because knowing that some of her patients would have come from inpatient status in the hospital, psychiatric hospital, and some might get troubled enough that they have to go there. So it was important that she had an experience of what that was like. Have you heard her tell this story? No. So she's at West Virginia University, and she goes to the psychiatric hospital, which is called Chestnut Ridge. And she goes up to the second floor where the psychiatry patient unit is. And she, as the nurse, she tells who she is, and she's come to get her patient. This is her very first time at an inpatient unit. And she notices some assistant nurses in the back or somebody giggling. And she thought, what's that about? So they give her a chart, and she walks into where it is, and the health professional assistant there that says, "Oh, here's your patient." And I don't know if she wasn't doctor yet, so they may not have called her Miss Sandell was her name at the time. And this man was in a catatonic state, sitting in a chair. He had not spoken for 4 days since he'd got into the hospital. They'd had to feed him to keep him alive. They'd had to wipe his bottom, change his clothes. He was totally, we think of all of us at times have been imprisoned by our thoughts. At least I have been, but never to the point where I had to be fed or had to be somebody wipe my bottom or put on my clothes for me. But he was there. That's how. And so when you said, what would I do? Where would I start? Where Linda, before she ever heard the principles, because these are universal and we know them already, she sat with this man quietly as she could. And because she had a lot of thoughts, oh my God, you know, I can't believe that's what they were giggling about, right? She had all these thoughts, but she then quickly, at some point, very quickly got present. This is where I am right now. Let me be present with this man. And she talks about how she had no idea what to do, but what came to her was to try to synchronize her breathing with his breathing. So she did that. And she suddenly felt incredible pain that he was in. Excruciating. And I don't know the timing. She would be the one to talk about this more if people have questions. I think she would. At some point, she spoke, and she introduced herself earlier and said, "I'm here. I just want to, I'm sure, very loving way. I just want to be of assistance to you. I know you're having a difficult time." I mean, I wasn't there, but I suspect it was in that direction. And then she just got quiet. And then at some point she spoke to him and she said, "Mr. Williams, I sense that you're in a tremendous amount of pain. And I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to let me take your pain overnight to give you some relief from your pain. And I'm going to take it to the church that I go to, and I'm going to stay there all night with God as I know God to be, and ask that I brought this pain from you, and then I'm going to ask that it be taken from me and from you." He didn't move. He didn't say, no expression. She had a small child. Her daughter was very young. She contacted her husband. She went home to change clothes. She said, "I'm going to the church all night. Can you take our daughter to day school tomorrow?" He said, "Of course." She spent the whole night at church. She came home in the morning. She showered, got dressed. She went to the hospital. As she walked onto the unit and went to get Mr. Williams's chart, the nurse came and said, what did you do to that man? What did you say to him?" She said, what are you talking about?" She said, "He woke up this morning and he had breakfast and he's been chattering away with people on the unit all morning. He's delightful. He's delightful. Wow. Wow. So I don't mean to be long-winded in my answer, but I guess, yes, these are difficult times, but has there ever been a time in the world? It's just that we're much more aware of all the people that are dying or killed in wars. They tell us from research that, I don't know that this may increase it, but that generally this is, there is less deaths from violence than there ever has been in the history of man, proportionally. So evolution is slow, but it's in a direction, as Martin Luther King, I can never quote it exactly, but the moral arc is long, but it moves towards justice. So the only thing I know to do is to take care of my own mental well-being, so I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem. That's the best I can do.
Thank you, Bill. That was a beautiful story I'll remember for a long time. Thank you.
There's a beautiful sequel. I mean, Linda, if people are interested, because, she said, "Is there anything I can do?" He said, "Ma'am, he had been raised under in a hole, fed through treated like an animal." And he asked her, he said, is there anything? She said, "Ma'am, if I could get some teeth." So he had no teeth, lost all of his teeth and she got him in touch with, and got teeth for him. It's not that you don't get practical. He said, "Ma'am, I'd also like to learn to read, so I can learn to read the good book." She actually found a retired minister that taught him how to read. She saw him in a store 30 miles away about 9 months later, looking very, very just peaceful. And he told her how grateful he was. Anyway. No silly questions.
Anyone else like to share anything or ask anything? You have mesmerized us, Bill, as usual, with your beautiful illustrations of the principles in action.
I just like to comment. I literally became a grandparent at Christmas, Bill, and I was sitting with my grandson yesterday, and I actually had that thought that he was teaching me so much, and how not different. I love my daughter, but there is something really pure about a grandparent's love, and it just struck me yesterday with him. So thank you for sharing that. Very meaningful for me.
You're welcome. I attribute I'm sure I was a handful, and my father was off to World War II, and I had another sister 15 months older than I. And I wasn't being ornery just to be ornery. I'm sure I was frightened. Who knows what was going on for me, but my grandmother was living with us. My mother's mother, my grandfather had died. And I felt her unconditional love. She did not see me as an ornery little boy or a bad boy. I felt it. And it was probably really, really important that I had that somewhere in my life. And I know some people don't. But it doesn't mean that it's not inside of us to be awakened by anybody. But thank you for sharing that. And parents, having been a parent and being a parent, I still have 4 children, 2 adopted, 2 biological, and I always loved them. But it's easy as a parent to, depending, my level of understanding as it increased, my love for my children became more and more unconditional. There's nothing that they could do that would take away my love. Nothing. No.
Yeah, I was just going to say with that, Bill, that I've noticed since coming to this understanding, it's helped so much with my relationship with my kids. Not all the time, because I'm a human being, but certainly being able to let go of disagreements more, or giving them the space to screw up or just have a bad temper. And I think it's helped me as a mum as well, not rake myself over the coals with guilt when my temper has got the better of me and I feel like I've done something a bit silly as a parent. And it's been an absolute gift to have that when there was a dark period before that. So I'm so grateful that it's part of my life now.
Wonderful. You know, there's nothing more powerful than apologizing, because we're teaching, right? We teach so much more by the way we are than by anything we say, right? There's a beautiful little book, I think it's on Amazon, by Kathy Marshall Emerson. Do people know that book? It's called Parenting with Heart. It's only 20 some pages. It's simple. It's no waving its finger at you. It's talking to you about being gentle and you know, yeah. It's beautiful. It's just 24 pages. Very precious. Parenting with Heart, Kathy Emerson Marshall. Thank you so much for your sharing. You know. It brings the joy back to parenting, doesn't it? It really does. It really brings the joy back.
Just wondering if anybody else has got any questions for Bill, or any questions about anything to do with the conference. It's just a great opportunity because it's the first time we've all kind of met in this way.
Well, and for people that are new to the principles, I don't know if some are, it may sound like we're talking a foreign language, and I don't mean to do that. You know, the one thing I'll say, Sue, if it's okay if I say something here, is one of the mistakes that people, mistakes is too strong a word, misunderstandings. I think that there are a lot of things in life where once we learn them, we know them. Once you learn how to add, you might make a mistake adding, but you always know how to add. Subtract. Once you learn how to ride a bike, you know how to ride a bike. It doesn't matter if you've not ridden one for 10 years. You know how to ride a bike. And if, you know, I thought of this, what if you were in a movie and they said you have to crash your bike and act like you don't know how to ride a bike? That would be very hard because you know how to ride a bike. And you naturally want to balance yourself. Same thing with swimming. I mean, there may be some people who haven't learned how to swim, but once you know how to swim, you know how to swim. It would be really hard if I had to play a role of somebody who was thrown in the water and didn't know how to swim. It would be really hard to act like you're drowning because you know how to swim. It becomes second nature. Now, once you start seeing that we are made of divine energy and not separate from it, and that we have access to this divine intelligence beyond our brain that we store information in, that we accumulate in life, and that you can either live your life from that intellectual information or you can live it from wisdom. Once you know that, life changes. But Mr. Banks would say there's an infinite number of doors of understanding these three principles. Infinite number of doors of understanding the connection between our spiritual nature and our psychological nature. I kiddingly say the last time I opened my math book and looked up infinite, it was a really, really, really big number. That's supposed to be an attempt at a joke, folks. Taking me way too serious here. My point being, if we can remember when we find ourselves in emotional pain or distress, to not believe those thoughts that say, you haven't learned anything about the principles. Look at you, you're at the mercy of your thinking. Well, not true. You've seen something, and what your challenge that's been brought to you in life now is giving you an opportunity to see beyond your present level of understanding, to pass through a few more of those doors of understanding. And all you have to do that, now, is so simple. I know you say, well, it's not easy, is to be present as best as you can. People ask me, they say, what do you do when you're in the midst of a thought thunderstorm? I say, what came to me, I just went to don't give a pat answer. And what came out of my mouth was, I do the best that I can to be where I am. Even if it's not very good, even if it's only a 2 out of 10 that I'm present, instead of judging myself that I should be better than, I embrace being the best 2 out of 10 I can possibly be. I accept totally, without resistance, where I am. And it's that total acceptance of where you are that will carry you 100% of the time beyond where you are to further insight. But to the degree that we are in resistance to where we are and in judgment, I should be doing better. It's not good to should on yourself. It's messy, really messy, time consuming, and energy draining. To the degree that we're in acceptance of where we are, even when we're not doing so well, and just embracing doing the best we can there, we will move forward effortlessly. But if you try to get there with your intellect, believe me, it's going to get worse. Woody Allen made a movie where he was asleep for 25 years. And when he woke up and realized that he'd been asleep for 25 years in the movie, his first words were, 25 years. Hell, I could have been halfway through my analysis. Again, that's an attempt at a joke, folks. If analysis is going to work for you, it's going to work within a minute or two, or it's not going to work in 3 to 4 decades. I'll stop jabbering again. Question?
How are we doing, everybody? I know that Bill's committed to a call in 10 minutes, so I'm just wondering if anybody's got any burning questions now. Oh, Helen.
Hello. Bill, I was chatting to my son today in the kitchen, and he has OCD, and he's had it really quite badly since he was about 17, and he's 24 now. And I got into trying to explain the inside out direction of reality and things like that. And I did find that he was a little bit more receptive to some of that, but I suppose my question is being loving and understanding at that deep, open-hearted level enough for somebody to be helped with when they have OCD, when they're living in a family where there's all sorts of atmospheres? We're quite accepting of him, but even so, he reacts to us in certain ways, because his problems are about, trying to keep things chemical free and things like that. I was just wondering what your thoughts might be about OCD, because I know you talk about other types of conditions.
Well, yeah, obviously it's beyond the 2 or 3 minutes that we have here, but OCD doesn't exist as a thing. It's an attempt to, like every other psychiatric label, it's an attempt to describe where a person is in their understanding and how it's manifesting. I've treated many, many people. All it means is I would bet that if he has rituals and things that he has to do, I would bet that I would just guess that he's spending 10 to 12 hours of his waking day in some form of stressful thinking. And his OCD is actually love letters, letting him know that he needs to look in a different direction. And so for him individually, I would encourage him to watch. Are you familiar with The Great Illusion and the Long Beach lectures? I would ask him if he would ever watch the first 16 minutes with you, just as openly as and ask him to do it at a time. If there was anything he could do to be a little quieter, whether that would be a warm bath or sitting with the kitty or a 15-minute walk, anything that would even give him 10% chance of a little quieter mind, and just ask him to watch it, to listen, to be impacted, not to try to understand what Mr. Banks was saying. So many people, something happens where they want to hear more, and then they want to hear more, and then so for him, I would say that. For you, I would say, to the degree that you find yourself losing your well-being in response to his, that just all we can do is take care of ourselves, is to keep looking in the direction. I take it you've read all of Mr. Banks's books. That's what I always encourage people. Read all Mr. Banks's books twice, watch his videos twice. Then if you have questions, come talk to me. Now I know that I'll probably put that on my gravesite, but yeah, and be okay with yourself. You'll be guided to the degree you get present. You'll be guided. If there's anything more for you to do, it will come to you in a moment of quiet, not in analysis. You know that. I think I'm talking to the choir. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I used to be a psychiatric nurse, so I can sometimes lapse into the wrong language.
Right.
But I do think the 3 principles has helped keep me very grounded and affectionate about it all, which I think he appreciates. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks
So I
for
see
that.
Paul McCarthy here. Paul, you got any words of wisdom for us here? I love working with Paul for some time, and I just wanted to give him, you don't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if I just have the deepest respect for.
You're very kind, and I have absolutely loved listening to you again, although I do know most of your jokes. And I can't wait to see you in the UK.
Okay. Anything at all? Anything else you want to share?
I've got football.
That's football,
Going on with
yeah.
football. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Paul
is a wonderful coach, and in his own way, he's the Ted Lasso of he teaches them to have the memory of a minnow, get present, right?
Absolutely. And we need to, because we keep losing. So only just, but we keep losing. But they don't get downhearted, and they come back every time, and we keep going, and
good.
They teach me more than I teach them, I can tell you that.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm gonna say goodbye in a couple of minutes, but is there anything before I can go till 5 before, Sue, is there anything or any last thoughts or anything anybody's chatted or anything?
I'm just really excited to see you, Bill, and
Okay.
for all these beautiful people to meet them in person. And well, certainly for me, the principles has made such a difference in my life. And you're one of the most loving and kindest men that I've ever met in the whole of my entire life, and it's always an honor to be around you. And I'm sure that people will feel the same once they've listened.
And remember that the principles, folks, they're a metaphor. Nobody's gonna find a box with mind, thought, and consciousness in them. They're a metaphor. They don't exist. They're a metaphor in form of the formless. The best that Sid came up to point to the fact that there is a formless energy behind life that we're part of and not separate from, that is intelligent, universal mind, conscious, and creative thought, the power of thought, the principle of thought, and that we are that energy, and that when we are in the present moment, and we're either one of two places, moment to moment in our life, we're either in our thoughts or we're in our life. And we're never going to be 100% in our life. But to me, as you look in the direction of this formless understanding called this metaphor of the three principles, they're just descriptive. They're not prescriptive. They're not telling you how to live your life. But as you look in that direction, you're effortlessly going to find more of the time that you're in your life and less of the time that you're in your thoughts. And gratitude is one of the keys. If we can be, George Pransky taught me very early when I met him in 1983, if we can be grateful when we're present and as graceful as we can be when we're not. Do as little bit of damage as possible when we're not. Keep our hands to ourselves and our mouths shut until we get back home. I'll leave you with that word, those words of wisdom. So I look forward to seeing you all.
Thank you, Bill.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Sue, can you unmute everybody to say goodbye to
Bill.
Bill?
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye. It's been wonderful. Bye-bye. Take care. Hope
Bye.
to see you. Good to see you again, Julie and Helen. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else need any questions answering about the conference or everything before we go? Or is everybody okay?
I've
Please-
got loads, Sue. I've got loads of questions.
Well, please feel free to email Annie or myself, and we are so looking forward to seeing everybody in June. So until then, lots of love.
And if you haven't got a ticket, why not?
Thank you, Sue and Annie. Thank you for organising.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Lovely to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
Thank you.